Good evening, and welcome to our debate program. Tonight, we delve into a fascinating and often contentious question in the world of sports. The topic for discussion is, should all sports teams be co-ed, regardless of gender? Joining us to argue their perspectives are Sarah, who will be arguing in favor of co-ed teams, and David, who will present the arguments against mandatory co-ed integration. We'll begin with opening statements, followed by discussion rounds, rebuttals, and finally closing statements. We aim for a respectful and insightful exchange of ideas. Sarah, you have the floor for your opening statement.
Thank you, Alex. I firmly believe that all sports teams should be co-ed. The segregation of sports based purely on gender is an outdated concept that perpetuates harmful stereotypes and limits opportunities for countless athletes. Sport should be about skill, dedication, and teamwork, not about reinforcing arbitrary divisions based on sex. When we separate teams strictly by gender, we imply that one gender is inherently less capable, or that interactions between genders in a competitive environment are somehow problematic. This denies athletes the chance to be judged and to compete, based solely on their abilities and potential. Furthermore, integrating teams offers significant social benefits. Co-ed environments foster better communication, understanding, and mutual respect between genders from a young age. Athletes learn to collaborate with, compete against, and appreciate individuals based on their character and skills, not their gender identity. This experience is invaluable, translating into healthier social dynamics beyond the sports field. From a skill development perspective, playing in mixed-gender teams can be incredibly beneficial. Athletes are exposed to a wider range of playing styles, tactical approaches, and physical attributes. This diverse environment can challenge players in new ways, pushing them to adapt and enhance their own skill sets, potentially leading to a higher overall standard of play. I acknowledge that there are perceived challenges, particularly concerning physical differences in certain sports. However, these are not insurmountable obstacles. With thoughtful rule adjustments, appropriate coaching strategies, and potentially the implementation of skill or weight classes where necessary, we can create fair and safe competitive environments for everyone. The focus should shift from automatic segregation to creative solutions that prioritize inclusion and merit. Ultimately, advocating for co-ed sports is advocating for genuine equality and a more progressive, unified sporting culture. It's time we move beyond tradition for tradition's sake and embrace a future where everyone has the chance to play together.
Thank you, Sarah, for that comprehensive opening. David, we now turn to you for your opening statement.
Thank you, Alex. While I appreciate the ideals of equality and inclusion Sarah has presented, I must argue that mandating all sports teams to be co-ed, regardless of gender or sport, is neither practical nor universally beneficial. My primary concern revolves around the undeniable biological and physiological differences between the sexes, on average. In many sports, factors like strength, speed, power, and endurance play a crucial role. Ignoring these average differences, particularly at higher competitive levels, could lead to situations that are not only competitively unbalanced, but potentially unsafe. This brings me to my second point, safety. In contact sports like rugby, ice hockey, or even basketball to some extent, mixing genders without careful consideration could significantly increase the risk of injury, particularly for female athletes competing against larger, stronger male counterparts. Protecting athletes must be a priority. Furthermore, the argument for separate gendered leagues often centers on preserving and promoting opportunities, especially for women and girls. Women's sports have fought long and hard for recognition, funding, and dedicated spaces to compete and excel. Mandatory co-ed teams risk diluting these opportunities. In many scenarios, due to average physical advantages, males might dominate team selections, inadvertently pushing female athletes out of elite participation, thereby undermining the progress made in women's sports. This also affects competitive balance. Spectators and athletes alike value fair competition. Introducing wide physical disparities onto the same team or field could fundamentally alter the nature and strategic depth of many sports, potentially diminishing the quality of play. While inclusion is a laudable goal, forcing a one-size-fits-all co-ed model ignores the specific demands of different sports and the need to maintain fair, safe, and meaningful competitive pathways for all athletes. There are better ways to foster inclusion, such as promoting mixed-gender events in specific disciplines where appropriate, rather than mandating a complete overhaul. Choice, safety, and the integrity of competition must remain central considerations. Therefore, maintaining gender-specific teams in many contexts remains the most sensible approach.
Thank you, David. We have clearly defined opposing viewpoints. Let's move into our first discussion round. Sarah, David raised significant points about physical differences and safety. How do you propose overcoming these in physically demanding sports without compromising fairness or athlete well-being?
That's a valid concern, Alex, but I believe the emphasis on physical difference is often overstated or used as a blanket excuse to avoid change. Firstly, physical prowess isn't the sole determinant of success in many sports. Skill, strategy, agility, and mental toughness are equally, if not more, important. Secondly, where significant physical disparities do pose a genuine issue, we can innovate. Rule modifications are common in sports. Adapting rules to ensure safety and fairness in a co-ed context is entirely feasible. Think about non-contact or limited contact sports, or even adapting rules in contact sports, perhaps focusing on different objectives or skill sets. We could also explore systems based on skill level or weight classes, similar to boxing or wrestling, rather than gender.
David, Sarah suggests focusing on skill and adapting rules. However, you mentioned that mandatory co-ed teams might undermine opportunities for female athletes. Could you elaborate on why you believe separate leagues offer a better guarantee of participation and success for women?
Certainly. While skill is paramount, in sports where physical attributes like height in basketball or speed in track events provide a distinct advantage, average differences between sexes can significantly impact selection, especially at elite levels. If selection is purely merit-based without considering gender, and males hold average advantages in key physical metrics for a specific sport, female athletes, even highly skilled ones, could find themselves consistently edged out of top-tier teams. Separate leagues guarantee a competitive pathway and spotlight for female athletes, ensuring they have the opportunity to compete at the highest levels, develop their talents, and gain recognition, which might be compromised in a fully integrated system across all sports.
Could you both provide examples, perhaps a sport where you think co-ed teams would work well, and one where it presents significant challenges?
Certainly. Sports like Ultimate Frisbee already have highly successful and competitive mixed-gender leagues at all levels. Equestrian sports, sailing, and some forms of shooting also see men and women competing together effectively, because the defining skills are less dependent on sex-linked physical traits. Tennis, with its mixed doubles format, also shows successful integration, though not full team integration. The challenges, as David rightly points out, are often perceived to be greater in high-impact contact sports like American football or rugby union, where size and strength differences are more pronounced, and safety concerns are heightened.
I agree with Sarah's examples to some extent. Sports where equipment plays a major role, or where direct physical confrontation is minimal, lend themselves better to co-ed participation. However, for sports like boxing, wrestling, rugby, or even basketball and soccer at the highest professional levels, the physical differences in speed, power, and size create significant hurdles for true co-ed integration that ensures both safety and competitive fairness without fundamentally altering the sport itself. It's simply not a practical model across the board.
Interesting points. We'll pause the discussion there and move to the rebuttal round. Sarah, you have the opportunity to respond directly to David's arguments.
Thank you. David's emphasis on physical differences and safety, while important, risks overshadowing the core principle of equality. Often, these concerns are based on assumptions, rather than evidence from well-structured co-ed programs. Safety can be managed through smart coaching, appropriate rule sets, and fostering a culture of respect and control among players. It's not an automatic consequence of playing together. Furthermore, the argument about preserving opportunities for women by keeping them separate is, frankly, patronizing. It implies women need protection rather than equal footing. True equality means creating a system where the best athletes compete, period. If separate structures are maintained, we risk capping the potential for exceptionally talented female athletes who could thrive in a more challenging, integrated environment. We shouldn't limit potential based on gender. The social benefits, breaking down stereotypes, fostering mutual respect, are profound and contribute to a healthier society. These benefits, combined with the potential for athletic development through diverse competition, far outweigh the logistical challenges, which I maintain are solvable with commitment and innovation.
Thank you, Sarah. David, your rebuttal?
Sarah speaks of equality, but true equality in sports should also encompass fairness and meaningful competition. Ignoring significant, average physical differences in the name of ideological purity doesn't serve athletes well, male or female. My concern isn't about protecting women in a patronizing way. It's about acknowledging physiological realities that impact performance and safety in specific contexts. Suggesting rule changes can solve everything is overly simplistic. How do you change rules in rugby or basketball to negate significant size and strength differences without turning it into a completely different sport? Furthermore, the idea that separate leagues cap potential is debatable. Women's professional leagues provide elite competition and career paths. Instead of dismantling these structures, we should focus on achieving genuine parity through equal funding, resources, media coverage, and respect for women's sports. This approach promotes female athletes and provides role models without compromising safety or the competitive integrity of sports where physical factors are dominant. The social benefits Sarah mentions can be achieved through various means, including mixed social sports or specific mixed-gender events, without mandating a potentially detrimental universal co-ed system for all competitive teams.
Thank you both. Let's move into our second discussion round. How might the implementation of co-ed teams differ between youth sports and professional or elite-level sports? Sarah?
At the youth level, I believe co-ed participation should be the standard for as long as possible. Physical differences are less pronounced before puberty, and the primary focus should be on skill development, participation, and fostering positive social interactions. Starting co-ed early helps normalize playing together and builds a foundation of mutual respect. As athletes mature and physical differences become more significant, particularly at elite levels, that's where careful consideration and potential adaptations, perhaps sport-specific rules, or skill-based tiers become more critical. But the default should be inclusion.
I see the merit in co-ed participation at very young ages, focusing on fun and basic skills. However, as children grow, especially around puberty and into adolescence, the physical divergence becomes undeniable and impacts play, particularly in speed and strength-based sports. Introducing gender separation at that stage, or offering parallel co-ed and single-gender options, allows for continued development in environments that remain safe and competitively appropriate. At the professional level, as discussed, the challenges of mandatory co-ed integration in many mainstream sports seem immense if we want to maintain the current standards of play and safety.
Are there examples beyond the ones mentioned, perhaps less mainstream sports, where co-ed teams are the norm and function well? And David, you contrasted mixed-gender events like tennis doubles with fully co-ed teams. Could you expand on that distinction?
Sports like korfball are designed explicitly for mixed-gender teams, with rules ensuring balanced participation. Quidditch, inspired by the Harry Potter books, is another example known for its inclusive gender rule. These demonstrate that co-ed team sports can be structured successfully and competitively. It often requires rethinking traditional structures, but it proves that integration is possible and can lead to unique and engaging forms of sport.
My distinction is important. Mixed doubles in tennis or badminton involves male-female pairs competing against other pairs. It's a specific format, not the same as having a basketball team, where players of different genders are directly competing for the same positions and playing roles under the same rules, potentially guarding each other. Korfball, as Sarah mentioned, is designed for mixed play. That's different from taking an existing sport like rugby, designed around certain physical assumptions, and simply mandating co-ed participation without fundamental changes that might alter its core identity. Mixed events often work well. Mandating co-ed across all existing team structures is the problematic proposal.
A final point in this round. If teams were co-ed, how should selection work? Sarah mentioned skill-based, but David raised concerns about displacement. How do you ensure fairness in selection?
Selection must be based on objective criteria relevant to the sport: skill, tactical understanding, fitness, teamwork. If assessments are fair and comprehensive, the best athletes for the team will be chosen, regardless of gender. Concerns about displacement often assume a fixed number of spots and rely on averages. A truly merit-based system might see different gender balances on different teams or in different sports, reflecting the actual talent pool. We shouldn't prejudge outcomes based on gender stereotypes.
Objectivity is the goal, but difficult to achieve perfectly. Unconscious bias can play a role, and even with objective metrics, if average physical differences confer significant advantages in a sport's key skills, e.g., jumping height in volleyball, a purely skill-based selection in a co-ed pool could systematically disadvantage female athletes from securing spots on top teams. This isn't about stereotypes. It's about acknowledging performance-relevant physiological factors. That's why dedicated spaces can sometimes ensure, rather than hinder, fair opportunity for representation at elite levels.
Thank you both for that insightful discussion. We now move to closing statements. Sarah, please summarize your position.
Throughout this debate, I have argued that making all sports teams co-ed is not just a viable option, but a necessary step towards genuine equality and progress in sport and society. Segregating athletes based on gender reinforces outdated stereotypes, limits opportunities based on potential, and denies participants the rich social and developmental benefits of learning and competing together. We've heard concerns about physical differences and safety, but these are challenges to be met with innovation, through adapted rules, smart coaching, and focusing on skill, not barriers used to justify exclusion. The success of existing mixed-gender sports proves that integration is possible. Choosing co-ed sports is choosing to value skill over sex, collaboration over division, and respect over prejudice. It fosters an environment where athletes learn to appreciate diversity in skills and approaches. Imagine a future where young athletes grow up seeing integrated teams as the norm, where the best players play together, regardless of gender. This is not just about sports. It's about building a more equitable and understanding society. The challenges are logistical, not fundamental. Let's embrace the change and create a truly inclusive sporting world for everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. David, your closing statement?
Tonight, I have argued against the mandatory implementation of co-ed teams across all sports. While the pursuit of equality and inclusion is vital, a universal co-ed mandate ignores the practical realities of sport, particularly concerning physical differences, athlete safety, and the preservation of competitive fairness. Average physiological differences between genders are significant in many sports and cannot be dismissed or easily overcome with simple rule changes without fundamentally altering the nature of the games we know. Safety must remain paramount, and in certain contexts, particularly contact sports, co-ed participation at a high level poses undeniable risks. Furthermore, mandating co-ed teams risks undermining the crucial progress made in women's sports. Separate leagues provide essential opportunities for female athletes to compete at elite levels, gain recognition, and inspire future generations. Dismantling this structure in the name of forced integration could paradoxically reduce opportunities for women. True equality in sports is better served by championing women's leagues, demanding equal resources, funding, and media attention, and promoting mixed-gender participation where it is safe and appropriate, rather than enforcing a potentially harmful one-size-fits-all model. Let us support diversity in sporting structures, offering choices that ensure safety, fairness, and meaningful opportunities for all athletes to excel.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Sarah, for a robust and thought-provoking debate on this complex issue. You've both presented compelling arguments that highlight the deep considerations involved. Thank you to our audience for joining us tonight. It's clear that the conversation around